Breaking Bridget.
The Democrats have taken the Republican point of view on things, and it's something I'm never going to get used to or comfortable. Dick Cheney came out in advance of the election and got behind Kamala Harris for president. There was a cringy video that came out from Lincoln Project, and it was a cartoon of Bernie and Dick Cheney sitting together on a bench talking about, as the odd couple, about being like, you know how we were on opposite sides? That's my Bernie impression. And he was like, yeah, I knew how we were on opposite sides, but now it's America versus Trump.
You were a warmonger.
And you were a commie.
Surprising to be on the same side as you.
Surprising to me, too.
And something like very stupid, but all this says to me, a layperson with no brains, is that all of these people are just part of the swamp. And in the same vein of this, a Gallup poll came out that showed that Democrats are pro-security state in numbers more than really ever before. Many of you might say, in 2019, that's not true. But if you look at the actual numbers and the trends, the Democrats have been pro-FBI, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, and the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, in numbers that are baffling to me. A 90s person who was very anti-big government, deep state, surveillance state, post 2001, when they started bringing in all of the surveillance, they also instituted the most pointless of all agencies, the TSA. And then go back even further, as Glenn Greenwald was pointing out, to the 60s and 70s, when these people were very anti-war, anti-Department of Defense, anti-military industrial complex, anti-surveillance spy security state. And these were 1960s and 70s Democrats who were against us. And now these boomers are all for it. These old school liberals and young people. And it's crazy to me. The people that I know who came of age around 9/11 and Bush and Cheney and getting into that war, when many of us were very skeptical of why we were going in and what our motivation was. And this libtard was actually correct about the fact that we were just trying to get some oil and that weapons of mass destruction was a big lie. Some of these people, my, whatever they're called, peers, I don't even want to call them my peers, but they're my peers, who are now saying that Dick Cheney is the guy that should be, like, on our side? Excuse me, what? No. And even the Democratic Party was like, even Dick Cheney. I feel like that doesn't signal what you think it signals.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
It just signals you're all part of some weird swamp, for lack of a better word. And I'm not saying that Trump is great at cleaning out the swamp, because I don't know anything about anything. But I do know that they keep trying to kill him, and he's anti all of this. All of these people together is terrifying. This is terrifying to me.
I know.
Kamala, like Dick Cheney, what? You guys are all pro FBI and CIA? What? So people will say, oh, people were pro these agencies when Trump was in charge. And it is true. There are some evidence that the Republicans were more pro some of these agencies when Trump was in charge. But even the FBI and the CIA, if you look at the numbers, they have been trending more positively viewed by the Democrats over the years than Republicans, which has actually been trending down. It's so weird. Like, the flip-flop is just so... And then we had Governor Josh Shapiro signing bombs. And again, I'm not some kind of like pearl clutcher about like Russia. I was one of the few people who has been like, what the fuck is going on in Syria? Russia has been just indiscriminately bombing these people for fucking sport for years while nobody cares. In all of the world, it feels like no one gives a shit about Syria. And I am not pro-Russia. I am anti-bad guy. I think he's a dictator. I think he will continue to try and take over and reconstitute the USSR. I am not smart enough to know what to do about Ukraine or any of these things. But it is very strange to see Governor Shapiro with Zelensky signing bombs that could get us into World War III. And who's going to profit from this? Raytheon, all these freaking companies that are just massive war companies. This was something Democrats used to point out. I understand the populist right's pushback against sending our people and getting involved and escalating this war. Putin has been very clear while our fucking president, who's brain dead, was on The View. He was over there saying that he's not going to hesitate to basically nuke anybody if they're going to encroach into Russia with these longer range missiles that we're signing. Like, yay, love America. And again, I'm not pro-Russia. I don't fucking know what to do about any of this shit. I actually don't know, but it is very strange. And it also seems like it should be illegal to have Zelensky over here during an election year, kind of stumping in Pennsylvania, which it's going to come down to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, in one of these artillery factories, standing for Kamala. That feels like, I don't know, foreign election interference. Again, I'm not a genius, but this seems very sketchy, and it does make me think this is all just a fucking money laundering scheme, which I know it's not. I am an independent who knows very little about international relations and how you would even try and figure something like this out. It is weird to have Putin and Zelensky both want Kamala for obviously different reasons. Putin wants Kamala because he wants us weak. And, Trump's a loose cannon and kind of pro-Putin, I guess. Is he pro-Putin? He feels like he might be.
He's got a little bit of a man crush on him.
And this is the other weird thing about these reversals. And I will say this about the Republican reversal that I'm not used to. Trump was giving a speech and he was talking about how Russia and Ukraine and how Ukraine is done. And the Ukrainian people have been fighting for their freedom. And I do feel like there was a time when Americans got behind democracy and people fighting for democracy. And again, we use it as cover to go bomb a bunch of other countries. So I understand the resistance to this, but that's strange too, to feel like we've lost that. Like that was very a Republican coded, moral kind of virtue that I always looked at them and was like, oh, okay. They were the people who seemed to believe in democracy, believe in freedom for people, and believe. And now, I don't blame these people who fucking came back from after 9/11, all these dumb wars, and the VA, which, God bless you, America, is universally hated bipartisan because it's a horrific shit show that doesn't do anything for our vets. And they come back and they don't want their kids to fight in this stuff. They went and they were completely disillusioned by all of the wars that they fought in and trauma they endured and things they had to do, and now have to live with that. And the suicide rate is insanely high among this population. We talked about this with Dr. Pewter on Walk-Ins Welcome this past week, an episode you should definitely check out. And I don't blame them. I get it. I get why people would be like, no, I don't want my kid going off and fighting some stupid war under the guise of democracy when it's really just Raytheon wanting to get rich and all of the plebs being used as like shrapnel. So yeah, anyway, it's very strange. But I also believe in democracy and freedom and fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. And I don't know where that leaves me, honestly. I am not the person you should be listening to because I'm really just a very confused citizen. But I do also think that I'm like, my reaction to seeing the Democratic Party really become the party of like big pharma and big war and big security and censorship, like AOC and Hillary Clinton, the past few weeks have both come out and said we need to censor the internet and use misinformation. And I keep saying it. I don't know who I'm more terrified of. I don't want to get in World War III, and yet it feels somewhat inevitable. Inevitable?
The Cheney thing is so weird. He was reviled by Democrats even more than George W. Bush.
Oh, more.
It's so much more. And the fact that Democrats are now cheering that he's on their side.
It's so weird. Yeah, it's very unsettling. And those of us who lived through that, like, absolute hatred of Dick Cheney, to be a person who's now cheering for him because you have a hatred of Trump that is as much, if not more, as your hatred of Dick Cheney was once, is crazy to me. Like, you can still be like, all right, I'm going to vote for Kamala, but you don't need to be like, and look, we've got Dick Cheney on board. What? Like, you should be embarrassed about this.
Yeah. You should be re-examining, being like, Dick Cheney's on board.
Maybe we're not the good guys. Holy shit. The most evil man who's done everything but nothing but enrich himself with the spoils of war and people dying all over the world is on our team. Perhaps we're not the good guys. I really understand more and more, and I think I finally am coming around to seeing the wisdom and brilliance of Michael Malice. The state is the problem. It is the state. Like, the conservatives want to conserve the state, and that state power just switches hands depending on who's in charge. And the real answer is minimizing the state. Like, I'm kind of becoming an anarchist.
Oh, God.
It's the only way forward. I don't know, like, what are we conserving exactly? It seems like there is these bigger factions behind the parties that run things. And it's only because the state has become so big and unmanageable that they have all of this power, and it needs to be minimized. I mean, I see even what they're doing to, like, Elon and all of these corporations, where they're basically like, play ball or you can't run your company. It shouldn't be like that. Mm-hmm. Like, all these petty lawsuits and taking all these organizations. We saw it during COVID, using the state to basically bully people into doing what you want. This is the problem most Americans have, but they're so divided they can't really see it. But we all have the same problem. It's the security state and all of these organizations, and it's just gotten too big and powerful, and it needs to be minimized somehow.
And the wealth disparity.
We need, like, an Argentinian leader, that kind of person who's gonna, like, slash all of these. I mean, this is what Trump allegedly, when Trump came out and he was like, I'm going to disband the Department of Education, I was like, good. Uh-huh. After my interview with Tulsi, I was like, yeah, get rid of it. It's so pointless. All it's done is increase administrative bloat. There's no more money going to teachers, and kids can't freaking read anymore in bigger and bigger numbers.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. What is it doing? The other good thing that did happen was the unions seem to be splitting for, like, the first time ever. The unions are not all going Democrat, which is actually good.